really important step, so thank you for doing it. I just wanted to find out if Portsmouth Climate Action Board had been involved in this, and also on section 3.4 with reference to the sort of future further work, I just wondered, will ultimately this be included in the Portsmouth City Council's carbon budget and auditing process and sort of included within that? Thank you.
So in terms of the Climate Action Board, not involved directly in this piece of work, because obviously this is very much focused around kind of almost those, I suppose, land holding institutions, so that was probably more the focus we were taking. But we've certainly reported back to them this work as well yeah, we had a follow-up meeting, didn't we, with the board, and reported it back to them in that sense. And it's probably worth also saying that Professor Steve Fletcher attended on behalf of the university, but is also the chair of the board, so there's a link in that way as well. So, yeah, but of course, you know, very happy to, if they wanted to sort of be involved in the work as it comes out, if there are particular parcels of work that feel relevant, then that's obviously a link that we're in a position to make, really, with that working that we have with them. So I think that's really positive. In terms of the future work and whether it will be reflected in the audit, what you'll see is those initiatives really will feed into the overall impact for the city. So I think some of them will be obviously very quantifiable in terms of if it's an energy consumption project, so we'll clearly be able to measure what the impact of that potentially would be. But actually, in terms of that mobilisation of sort of the workforce doing things differently or what have you, I think you just generally see that feeding into the impact for Portsmouth as a whole. So where there's a clear measurable element, that we'll certainly see to capture that, but actually some of this will be behaviour change stuff that will feed into that impact over a period of, you know, years potentially. But yeah, we would hope that anything we do would see a positive impact, and that would be captured somewhere.
Any other questions or comments at all for anyone? No? Oh, no, that's perfect. Thank you so much for that, Kelly. We'll release you, so thank you. So after that, we'll move on to number 4. So I'll pass straight back to Andrew with the low-case bits. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Low-case is the low carbon across the southeast. It's acronym for it. It provides business support to SMEs, those organisations with fewer than 250 staff, and it provides that information in a few ways, which I'll go on to in a second. So really the paper is just to set out what the low case scheme is, the way that it's going to be employed to lower organisations carbon emissions within Portsmouth and the wider Solent and South East region, and to talk about some of the other sort of inward investment opportunities as well. Low cases. This is an iteration of low case which comes off the back of an existing scheme which is funded through European Regional Development Funding, and it's been run by Kent County Council for a number of years. This latest iteration of this has been slightly held up by the pandemic and various other factors, but we're now in a position where we're starting to talk about this much more widely with SMEs in the area. The previous scheme under Kent County Council was purely for East Sussex, Essex, and Kent. And I think that was the entire geography. This one's been widened out to incorporate some other areas as well as West Sussex and the Solent Hampshire region. The project is, as I say, is commenced. In essence, it's just been a soft launch to start those things in, but we will push it harder moving forward. It's going to run until spring 23, and in that time, it offers SMEs either outright capital funding for projects which can introduce measures into those organisations to reduce their carbon emissions. So those things can include improvements to the buildings and premises that the organisation uses. It can also actually include things like plug-in loads, and so a lot of examples that we've seen in the previous iterations of low case have been things like refrigeration and tooling and machinery and the sort of things that aren't necessarily always picked up by one of these schemes, where it tends to be the kind of bricks and sticks and building services that very often are the things that are picked up. Those measures can be funded up to 40% of the capital value, so it's a good sized discount from measures designed for energy efficiency, carbon efficiency. Sorry, I should get out of saying energy efficiency, because it's all carbon things. It can improve things like active transport and some things that don't have a direct energy efficiency saving to them as well. It also offers a range of non-financial support as well, and I think that's, for me, is as important as what it's doing from a kind of capital intervention point of view. So it includes one-to-one business development support for businesses that are SMEs, I should say, that are working already in a low carbon space to try and improve their business models, to try and improve their business approaches. But it also gives some grant funding for some of the things that might create a barrier to entry for some of those organisations. So, I mean, just thinking about the work that we do in the energy services team and in the domestic team in particular, there are times where, for instance, companies need to accede to a Trustmark or PAS 2035 or MCS, and it's here that these things can there can be help given to those businesses to do that. This phase of Low Case has a budget of just under £31 million. It's aiming to support over 2,000 SMEs, and it will cut carbon emissions per annum by 11,000 tonnes. I don't think there's too much more to say. I suppose the SMEs are able to register. They get free audits as part of this work, so free energy audits undertaken. Whether or not they actually take that audit to the full sort of fruition in terms of doing the intervention that the audits pick up or not is for them, and whether or not there's capital money available. But fundamentally, it allows for a lot of audit and data taken to be made, if not even the intervention itself. As I say, over the course of the next month or so, we'll be launching on Twitter, on platforms like Twitter and Facebook. We're going to develop a dedicated website for this, akin to the Switched On website that we have for the domestic. And really, it's just a way of trying to help those small and medium enterprises in the city, where there's been a kind of not a lot of support really historically for these things, and I suppose with the exception of the Emphasise M3 stuff that's going on at the moment, this is the next phase to try and improve those businesses.
Thank you for that, Andrew. When you brought this to me to talk about, I thought it was really, really interesting, because I didn't realise that we had 8,000 plus small businesses in the area, of Portsmouth. So, it does represent a significant amount of businesses across the city, and a lot of them are small, local, independent businesses as well, which is what we really want to be supporting. What I was just going to say was that I've already spoken to quite a few traders across the whole city, so I won't name them, but some up in Cosham, Elm Grove, Milton Market, Albert Road sort of way. They're really interested, so they will want to look to see what they can do. Obviously, we're about to do the soft launch over the next month. Where would you get them to have a look, to go and see where do they need to go to online to have a look?
Our website isn't ready yet, is the first thing to say. But there is the sort of parent website, if you like, the Low Case website, where they can take these things on, and we'll circulate that, and we're going to start promoting. In fact, we've started the promotion on social media, but through the Switched On website, which is perhaps not quite the right audience at the moment. So we're going to promote that further. The other thing that we're doing, and the reason that we know, for instance, that there are 8,000 SMEs in the city, which is a surprisingly large number, is because we've been working with the economic development team within Portsmouth, with Mark Pembleton's team and various others, to identify the best routes into those organisations. So I know that Low Case we've been along promoting Low Case at the business briefings that the City Council holds, and certainly if there's any groups of traders like discrete sort of pockets of traders like Albert Road or wherever else, then we can certainly reach out to them and promote it directly, and be more proactive in terms of the promotion and push the promotion of it.
Thank you. I don't know, Scott, if you've got any questions?
I didn't, but I actually do. I just looked. I've been scanning through the report, and I think it's mainly 4.7, Andrew, that I was interested in. which is talking about grant funding available for carbon reduction opportunities. And on transport efficiency, it says about ultra-low emission vehicles and sustainable travel planning and fleet management software. And I'm purely speaking with my licensing committee hat on now. Various drivers already access funding through the DFT, I'm sure that you're already aware of. But would this be additional funding for them to access vehicles, as technically they are small, medium enterprises, especially those operators that have more than one vehicle on the road? So I don't know whether they would be eligible, or if you could just clarify if they would be.
That's a very good question, and they would be, so long as I suppose that they haven't had grant funding from elsewhere, which I think we're probably talking about, because often there's often DFT funding. I don't think there can be a duplication of funding here for reasons of state aid and those sorts of things. I suppose what I would say is that if say the vehicle itself has been paid for from a particular grant, then there will be grant funding available, I believe, for things like EV charging infrastructure and things like that, so that there are improvements that can be made to the infrastructure for EV charging, for instance, that might go alongside a taxi that's got that's an EV vehicle.
Yeah, I think that's actually quite a good point to make. So, because obviously where these vehicles are, we're trying to obviously encourage more electric vehicles, more hybrid vehicles, which is difficult, I think, because a lot of drivers are set in their ways, and a lot we have to make sure that we get the EV chargers in the right place. But I think that is the point where I would like you, if you could, just send me something, like in a briefing note, and I think obviously send it to the rest of the committee, but I would just be interested to see where the eligibility lies and whether we can actually help some of our small, medium enterprises and our taxi drivers.
No, absolutely. We'll do, Councillor Peter Harris. We'll send that across, and we'll also perhaps point out some of the other things that could be improved as well around some of the, they tend to have premises which could have, interventions like new lighting and even fabric efficiency interventions and those sorts of things, so we'll do.
Thanks for that, Scott. That was interesting. Thank you. Charlotte, I don't know if you've got any points at all.
Thank you, Chair. This sounds like a really brilliant opportunity, and thank you for working on it. I think it would be great, if possible, when it does launch, if you could make sure an email goes to full council, because I'm just thinking of Southsea. There's so many independent small businesses that would benefit from this, and a lot of them are very sort of environmentally focused and would really be up for something like this. I just wondered if you had a rough timeline of when you expect the funds to be disseminated. Thanks.
The project's live, essentially, so we can take applications today. We've really been soft launching it because we want to see that the back end function works. We don't want to be building up a demand that then can't be serviced. But fundamentally, we've been doing that for the last few weeks and months or so to pull a few people into it. But we have, as I say, we haven't pushed big in a big way yet. Honestly, we could do that. We could do that tomorrow. As the paper sort of sets out, it's really Kent County Council who are doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. We've benefited from this by throwing our hat in the ring and offering to do the marketing of it, the promotion of it, and those sorts of things in this area. But yeah, we can push it out immediately. And certainly the full council and well, basically to anyone else who'll listen. But yeah, and I suppose we have the other thing that we have in Portsmouth, which is sort of testament to the work that the economic development team does, is they have very, very good data about who the SMEs are, who they're managed by, and additionally people like Shaping Portsmouth who can act as that arbiter as well to get that information out.
Just a follow-up question. Is there going to be, if you've got that database, is everyone going to be written to be told about this, or do you not have that much detail?
We don't have that level of detail. There's no reason why we can't write to everybody. I suppose we probably just want to have a bit of a watch and brief on that. I think there are SMEs and there are SMEs. Some of the SMEs will have premises and will have assets that can be improved this way. There are others where it's one person working out of a bed. There's micro businesses and things like that where perhaps the benefit won't necessarily be seen, and you'd be building a demand that you might create quite a lot of inquiries that don't go anywhere, essentially. So we will be a little bit more selective about that than just sending out to absolutely everybody.
Any other comments from anybody at all, or no? No. Thank you very much for that, Andrew. That was really interesting. Thanks everyone for their questions and comments as well. So we will then move on back to Andrew. So something I'm quite excited about, the switched on homes. So over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Switched on Homes is to be a new software tool that we launch onto the Switched on Portsmouth website. We think the launch of that is probably going to be within the next 2 or 3 weeks, although we've had a few we've been knocking it about over the last few weeks to decide whether or not we launch with something that isn't quite ready, or whether or not we wait and do it properly. And I think we're probably falling on the latter at the moment. So Switched on Homes is really a software tool designed to improve energy literacy within domestic homes in Portsmouth. We did an awful lot of work a couple of years ago when we were setting up the Switched on Portsmouth service in the first place, which looked at how much do people actually know about the way that energy is used in a home. And the answer that we got fairly loud and clearly from the consultation that we did was not actually that well, you know, to the general person in the street. It's all right for like energy geeks like me who think about this day and night, and you know, there's a good, you know, lots of normal people, in inverted commas, never think about this. So what we've done over the course of the last couple of years with the Switched on Portsmouth service generally, but also off the back of the home energy support service paper that we brought at the beginning of last year, is we've developed more and more tools to try and help with people understand how energy is used, and that's included a lot of video content, a lot of written content on the Switched on Portsmouth website. We've also launched the Switched on Solar tool, which looks purely at the solar capacity of roofs to take PV panels, and the help that those panels can give in terms of carbon emission savings, energy efficiency savings, what the likely capital cost is, and those sorts of things. Switched on Homes is the next step from that. Switched on Solar just looked at the solar potential. Switched on Homes uses energy performance certificate data, or inferred energy performance certificate data, and then it gives you a rating for your home and tells you about the interventions that you can make in your home to make it more energy efficient. Now, there are limitations in terms of energy performance certification and the way that software works under the standard assessment procedure, which effectively promotes interventions in properties which are purely financial, or it certainly prioritises the interventions which make a financial intervention. What we've done with this tool is we've looked at those financial interventions, but we've also looked at carbon interventions as well. So we've taken recommendations that would ordinarily never show up in an EPC, and we've included those in the software, so that's been modelled into the software. So the idea is that a resident who has a passing interest in the energy efficiency of their property, and at the moment energy bills are going through the roof, or are about to increase 54% at the start of next month, we'll go onto this tool, punch that postcode into the tool, pick an address, look at their EPC data if EPC data exists. If not, an EPC data will be inferred from modelled information, and then it will take that the EPC data and say these are the recommendations made in the EPC, but these are some other recommendations that we know from modelling this property that you could install. And the things that are above and beyond what an EPC would recommend tend to be things like solid wall insulation, air source heat pumps, and solar. The benefit of that is that we actually have a number of schemes running at the moment which offer free first time free solar, free air source heat pumps, and free insulation to properties up to a value of £10,000 under what we call the Warmer Homes scheme, which we've brought papers to this meeting about before. We've actually just beefed up the amount of funding in there, so we now have around about 30 million, well, over 30 million pounds to take forward up to March 23 for such interventions. And what we're hoping is that this will give people a bit more information, a bit more comfort, and a bit more confidence to actually be able to apply for the right measure the first time round when they come into our schemes. If you don't qualify for the schemes, then there are other routes you can take. We have an approved solar installer list, and we're going to beef that up and make an approved air source heat pump installer list off the back of the funding that we've just won and the boiler upgrade scheme. And there's also offers of low-cost finance and things like that as well that homeowners can take advantage of. So I suppose it works on three levels. It's to improve energy literacy more generally, so that people understand how energy is used in their homes based on the characteristics of the home. It helps people to it helps as almost a front end for us to attract people into some of the schemes that we've got running that can offer this stuff for free. And it also gives the information to a homeowner to be able to make an intervention in the home, an installation in the home, whether they have to pay for it or not, essentially. So that's, I think I've covered. It's very difficult to describe this without actually showing you. But if you'll forgive the slightly long-winded, but yeah, that's everything.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I know myself and Charlotte, we've sort of seen the website. I know it's not been quite launched yet, but we've managed to see the process that you've been going through. I love the fact that you could look at it, you could decide what measures to put on and off, so you could see not only the financial savings, but the carbon savings that you've got as well, because that's equally as important. But especially with everything going on with the fuel crisis and the energy crisis in general, if we can give people the power to make their own informed decisions, what they want to do and what they can do, what they might be entitled to from us as a council, or if they're not, giving them a number of different options to look at as well. So I think that's fantastic, and I absolutely love the fact that if you didn't understand what a ground source heat pump or anything like that was, you could click on it and it takes you to a very short video so that you can understand what it means. It's not one that's going to take 15 minutes to watch, it's just a nice short one, explains what it means, and then you could go, oh yes, no, that's quite nice, or no, don't fancy that. So I thought it was really interesting, but it does give ownership back to people as well, and you can sort of really start to understand where your energy is going and how you can save that. So thank you so much, it's really interesting. So pass my thanks back to the team. I know I'll let Charlotte go first if that's all right this time. Or Charlotte, I don't know if you've got any questions or comments at all.
Just to say, yeah, it's brilliant. We did have a demonstration at the briefing meeting prior to this, and yeah, it's just fantastic, and I can't wait to use it myself.
Scott, I know you're dying to say something, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a really good report as always, Andrew. I have to be honest. I mean, I'm quite interested in the switch on service, especially from the housing perspective, and the differences that you've made. I mean, I'm just going to go through a few bits in the report which are interesting. Obviously, 4.9, it says it's currently in beta testing, and saying mid-March in the report, we are mid-March. So, I mean, is that now? So just can you clarify that for me? I just wanted to look at I'm looking at the website and I'm looking at the improved installers, which I think is important. And I think that's something that me and you have discussed quite often about basically whether we have the installers out there to be able to deliver the works that we want at the moment, especially when it comes to regards to air source heat pumps. I just think, I'm looking at low carbon heating installation, it says coming soon. I mean, where are we with our contractors on that? Are we actively looking for contractors? Because I think it's quite important that this could be coming down the line very quickly, and if we don't have the contractors in place, we could have a very, very big waiting list.
I'll start with mid-March. Do you know what? Genuinely, we thought we'd be in a position right now to launch this. We have got the beta testing, and we could launch it if we really wanted to. But I think we'd create quite a lot of failure demand if we did, because I think there's just enough in there that leaves questions unanswered that you wouldn't be given a comfortable customer journey, and we're keen, particularly as we go into what we think is going to be a real crisis period from the 1st of April, that we're really keen that when we're attracting the right sorts of, we're attracting the calls through from people who really, really need the help rather than because there's an error in a website, essentially. So that's an excuse, really. There's we could launch it. I think we'll be much more comfortable around mid-April to launch this than where we are today. Just another 2 or 3 weeks on it.
Okay. I think what was the other point I made? I was talking about air source heat pumps, actually. I think it's a good point. I know that the chair made about air source heat pumps. I mean, I understand obviously there is a slight funding gap between actually the purchase and getting, but it's much more than that with air source heat pumps. For example, the quality of the properties in Portsmouth, for example, you know, it has to have you have to be significantly airtight to actually install an air source heat pump, and also it's ideal with an underfloor heating system rather than a radiator system. So for example, I'm just going to say like a 600 by 600 P plus radiator. Sorry if you guys don't know what that is, but I'm pretty sure Andrew does. Apologies, I'm getting into lingo that I would usually deal with at work. But yeah, so for example, that would probably have to be double, even triple the size depending on the heat pump. You know, and obviously ground source is an option because I don't think many people can dig the pits in their garden to actually put them in, which is also the problem as well. So I think I'd like to see us go down the air source route. I mean, feasibly and getting better value for money, I don't think that's going to be where we are. So, I mean, are you looking towards electric more so than air source?
So what we've got funding for at the moment, so the funding that we've just won, that we just announced a couple of weeks ago, is something called Home Upgrade Grant, and that really does push on properties that are already electrically heated and moves them away, it moves them across to an air source solution. We haven't restricted ourselves in terms of air source. We've also allowed things like high retention storage heaters and those sorts of things as well. And we've done that, left the high retention storage heaters in for exactly those circumstances that you recommend. So those areas where you haven't got the level of insulation and air tightness in a property, but also it's there, to be honest, as a bit of a safety net, because we think we might struggle to actually install enough air source heat pumps to satisfy the entire funding. And the reason for that is that there aren't enough air source heat pump installers and people with that technical knowledge and air source installers themselves within Portsmouth and the surrounding area. Now, we are at the moment doing a piece of work with installers under that HUG and LAD funding. This is the grant funding that forms part of the Warmer Homes project. And what we're trying to do is to move a lot of SMEs that are gas engineers, fundamentally, gas heating engineers, across to air source. And the way that we're doing that is by working with the delivery partners, Agility Eco, where they are, well, they're doing there's two things. The first thing is that they're trying to improve, they're trying to take people through the process of a seeding to Trustmark and MCS, which is really important. And it actually refers back to the paper that we just talked about, that there's some funding within the low case for these kind of things to remove that barrier of entry for small businesses. Otherwise, they'll never move away from what they do, i.e. they're gas heating engineers, and they will remain so. The second thing is that we're allowing them to install air source and training them or helping them to install air sources, but then using a sort of grandfathering of the MCS, so that an MCS approved installer, auditor, designer oversees what they are doing, what that gas engineer is doing, and then because it becomes a sort of, there's a vicious circle where somebody who purely does gas installations, they never do an air source installation, and they can't get over the line to do an air source installation until they've done a number of air source installations. They'll never get the MCS funding, and we're aware of that vicious circle. So what we've done is we've taken the MCS on a kind of parent level from a third party, and we're using that to try and move some gas engineers in this supply chain in this local area into that space. And the reason that we're doing that is not so there's a number of reasons why we're doing that. Obviously, we want more. We want to help businesses out in the local area, but from an entirely selfish point of view, the more robust the supply chain of air source heat pump installers that we have in the Portsmouth area, the more confident we can be to apply for big chunks of grant funding, like we've just done through BEIS and various other funding partners, and we'd be relatively confident that we're going to spend the money in the right way, in the right period of time. So it works, basically it works for everybody. You can call it social value if you will, but fundamentally it helps our supply chain, and it helps us have a level of confidence when we're bidding for this stuff, that we've got air source heat pump installers on our books that we know and trust, and that we can use, and that we can get over the line with. I'll probably yeah.
No, I think that's a really good fair point. I can give you the details of 2 training schools locally that are training air source heat pumps and they're using government funding to do so. So I can give you that afterwards. On the idea of the pumps themselves, because obviously we have mentioned the cost of them and there is a funding gap. I think initially it might be an idea to actually set out what we're going to procure, so we can actually say this is the pumps we can get a specialist rate for them. I think it would be a good idea, and then at least we know that what we're installing are all the same effectively. We're not quite down the Tesla Powerwall route that we'd like to be, Andrew, I know that. Also as well about the affordability ratings from I think we're looking at the Wessex Community Bank. I think that's quite sensible in terms of using them as a partner, especially I've just had a quick look at what their ratings are. They're much cheaper than the high street. So I think pushing people in that direction is quite sensible. But as I said again, I think I'll hand over to you later about the 2 training schools, because I think they would come in handy for this as well. But that's just my concern when it comes to air source, that there is a funding gap, obviously that we need to try and fill.
If I may, I think the air source heat pump funding gap is twofold. That there is a capex issue with air source, i.e. that it's much more expensive to put air source into a property than a conventional boiler system. It's double roughly, but in the first time central heating system versus air source, and it can be much more expensive where it would otherwise be a like for like combi swap or something like that, and you've got to go as Councillor Peter Harris says to larger space emitters. So that's one of the reasons why this tool looks at two metrics. It looks at both the cost metric, as a lot of people will be interested in how they can get to a cheap bill quickly, but it also looks at a carbon metric as well. And the reason that it does that is because a unit price of electricity is roughly 4 or 5 times more than a unit price of gas. So there is no doubt for most homes that the best solution for that home to be on from a fuel poverty point of view is a conventional boiler burning gas. However, we recognise that not everybody who's going to come into the Switched On Homes tool is going to be purely motivated by financial savings. There will be people who are motivated by carbon, and the tool actually allows you to toggle across between what the best interventions are from a cost point of view or an OPEX point of view across to a carbon point of view, and it also ranks them on the capital cost as well. So yeah, there's a couple of different things there. That operational cost of air source is one of the problems that's held us back from really deploying air source in a big way under the local authority delivery scheme under Warmer Homes, because what you've got to do is improve the EPC in order to make the intervention, and very often you can't actually make this intervention to improve the EPC because, as I said earlier on in the introduction, EPCs look at cost, so there is no cost. There's no cost benefit of doing air source. It really is down to carbon, unless you've got a situation very often where somebody's in a property where they're just using straightforward electricity, panel heaters, night storage, something like that, or a very, very, gas room heaters or something very inefficient like that. And the Wessex Community Bank piece, we actually put that in place about a year ago because we recognised that there was, at one end of a spectrum, you've got people who have household income of lower than £30,000 are applicable for the Warmer Homes scheme. That's one end of the spectrum. Then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got somebody who's got £6,000 to spend on solar panels on top of their property in their back pocket. And there's a very, very big number of people in the middle of there that don't have that. So we were keen to try and offer some sort of financial mechanism by which people could do that.
Thank you for that, Scott. Charlotte, I don't know if you've got any other comments, or Scott, even if you've got anything else you want to say. No? No. Well, thank you very much for that report. Obviously, we're really excited to see it coming forward. So that ends the meeting, but just before we finish, I just wanted to say thank you not only to the officers who've been at the meetings throughout the year and supported me in this new role, but also to Charlotte. You've been fantastic, and if you could pass on to Rob as well, really good opposition spokespeople. I think we've had a really good relationship in here, very open. So thank you very much to everyone who's been really helpful throughout the year, and obviously we're breaking for Purdah, and hopefully I'll see you back in this chair in a few months' time. So thank you, everyone.